Traci Ramos, and this is Booze Nation, the podcast, where I talk to members of the bar industry of San Francisco about all things bar related and all things San Francisco. Booze Nation is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartradio, Spotify, and other listening places. You can also find Booze Nation, the podcast, on the socials. I'm not going to go through the list. You know where they are. It's February. It's kind of raining, so please be careful out there with the sinkholes and the flash floods. And that's the weather portion of this podcast. Before I introduce my next pcast guest, I want to give a huge shout out to Asia SF. So sad they are closing. Such a loss to South of Market. Such a loss to the cabaret drag performers. And such a trans and queer staple. And this one hurts. So good luck to everybody that's involved with Asia SF. My next guest is Michael Nguyen. I met Michael at a meet and greet thing in the beginning of the month at a Chinatown New Year's celebration at the Rose Pak Democratic Club. I should back up a little bit. I'm volunteering for Jackie Feilder's campaign for Supervisor District 9 in the Mission, and I volunteered for many political campaigns in San Francisco, and I've gone to many political functions, and many of the same people are there saying the same things and trying to get something out of you, usually money, sometimes votes. But when Michael asked to join our table, he had this bubbly personality and wanted to talk and wanted to get to know people at our table. It was a real conversation. We didn't talk long because he was getting ready to sing karaoke. But I learned that he is a drag performer and his drag persona is Juicy Lui. Love it. And I learned that he was running for a seat on the DCCC. And I knew I wanted to have him as a guest because a drag queen who is super political is my kind of person. And as you'll hear, Michael's sense of humor comes shining through. And we're going to bounce right into it.
You must be so busy right now with everything going on.
Yeah, I'm wearing my lucky fortune cookie red shirt. It's Lunar New Year's Eve. And I'm headed down to Southern California to visit with my mom. I'm flying my mom out from Texas. So we're going to go see the Tet Festival in Orange County, which is the largest Tet Festival in the country. Vietnamese New Year is a very special celebration of renewal and, happy feelings, warm feelings with family, and kind of a renewed sense of hope for the future. So I'm really excited for it. And also, yes, it happens right in the middle of my campaign, which is a good time for sure.
And that was one of my questions. Are you originally from the Bay Area, but you're talking about Texas? So what's that about?
I was born actually in Chicago. My family were refugees from Vietnam. They met at a refugee camp in Florida. My mom moved to Chicago. My dad followed her later. I was born there, ended up moving around the whole country, lived all over the place, lived all around the South, Louisiana, Georgia, North Carolina, Texas. I ended up in Texas. I'm from Dallas. I always go into my drawl when I get a little bit tired, and so it's been a long week. But yeah, I'm from Dallas. I went to college in Austin at Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas. And then after I was there for 7 years, I was like, I need to leave Texas. And I moved to California. Been in California since 2003. So I have been now a Californian longer than I have been a Texan.
I had no idea about that. Wow. That's a journey right there. When you moved to California, did you move to the Bay Area first?
I moved to San Diego first. my uncle was down in Oceanside. And so I was 21 years old. I had just graduated. I had no job. It was 2003. The .com had bursted. The bubble had bursted. And I was just trying to find my way in California, and I knew I could land in Oceanside and San Diego area. I found a job. I decided not too long after I started working that maybe, this tech support stuff is not for me. So I kind of went back, studied for the LSATs, became a lawyer. So yeah, it's been a journey ever since all of that. And then I started my first year of law school down in San Diego, and I transferred law schools up to San Francisco, to Hastings. Now it's called UC Law San Francisco.
So let's talk about the law that you practice for a little bit. Or first of all, do you think lawyers get a bad rep?
And that's funny. When I was first deciding to go to law school, it's actually very much tied to my LGBTQ identity. So, again, I lived in San Diego. I was 21 and I joined the gay men's chorus in San Diego. I marched in parades, but I hadn't been out to my parents. And so and if you recall, 2003, 2004 was when marriage equality was definitely coming up. George W. Bush was trying to be reelected and using marriage equality as like a wedge issue. I mean, this sounds so familiar, right? Like the LGBTQ community being used as a wedge issue in politics. Here we are. Anyways, and I decided, hey, I need to go. It was 2004. I was like, I'm going to come out to my parents. I flew back home, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. At the time, they're divorced, right? So I brought them together, and I was like, I need to tell you something. My mom stops me right there. She's like, oh, it's about your alternative lifestyle, right? And I know already. You don't need to tell me. I'll tell him later in Vietnamese. How's your job? And that unlocked within me like power, because like I felt empowered just to be my complete authentic self, and knew that my mom always had my back. On the way back to the airport, she brought her Singaporean friend in the back seat to drive her back. And this again, marriage equality was in the air. And just as she's a church lady friend, and she was just talking, I don't know how two men could love each other, and what is Rosie O'Donnell doing to their children, and all this stuff. And I'm just like arguing with her, driving on the highway, and cause I'm feeling really empowered, and I was like, how could you, why do their marriages affect you at all? And why should you care? Why should we put discrimination into the Constitution? That's crazy, At the time, the federal marriage amendment was going through Congress, and Senator Clinton, I had been reading all this stuff, but Senator Clinton at the time was like arguing very vociferously against putting discrimination into the law. And they already had defense of marriage, all this stuff. Anyways, at the end of that trip, getting on the airplane, I was like, I think I should go to law school. And lawyers, I think, have a unique way of seeing the world. Just like I was a music and computer science double major. When you study music, you think of music differently because you can speak the language. When you're a programmer, you can read code. You can see computer science stuff differently. You can see tech differently. And it's just the same with the law. I wanted to understand the law. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, but I think by going to law school and now practicing for over 15 years, I can think quickly on my feet. I can analyze whatever statutes before me, and kind of talk it out and see what's going on policy wise. And so that's giving me some toolkits. And then I think lawyers we have to go to law school for that. And so the lawyers to answer your question, lawyers get a bad rap because, that's kind of like, they might be argumentative, they might be duplicitous, whatever it is. I don't think that's right. I think most lawyers, the vast majority of lawyers, 99.99% lawyers are, seeking the truth, are there to defend democracy and support and defend our Constitution.
I like hearing that, the vast majority they're trying to fight for the Constitution.
Yeah, I think that's right. Of course, there's always going to be folks who are trying to be the zealot advocate for their clients. And that means maybe pushing hard on wherever the lines are. But the beautiful thing about the law and the way that we govern ourselves is that, we can argue, does this law make sense, to the court, and keep, our system of government allows for that type of arguing. Other types of government don't have that, right? Like totalitarian governments do not have that. Like, and nothing, I mean, it's Happy New Year and all that stuff, but like, communist China, there's one party and they just tell you what is true, so there's no arguing about what is good for, equity and equality. In America, it's messy. Democracy is messy, but, because we have that, I think it's a good thing.
I agree. So you've been practicing law, you said, for 15 years?
Yes. It's since 2008. When Barack Obama became president. That's how I really remember. That was my first year as a lawyer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kind of was a glorious time. So what were you doing through the pandemic? Were you able to work? Did you have clients? How did that work?
Yeah. So I practice patent prosecution. So I work mostly with software companies. And the nature of my work is very much I can sit by myself and do the job, remotely. I've been working from home for many years, actually. So I already had my full setup. So thankfully I was able to work, but also I had at the same time put on a drag show called Juicy Thoughts. My drag name is Juicy Lui, like Lucy Liu, but juicier, Juicy Lui. And that show had to stop. I was trying to uplift BIPOC drag performers. that may not have had chances to perform in the Castro. It was a Thursday night, so relatively busy, but not too busy, once a month. That show, I had to end it because, well, the pandemic, of course, everything stopped. But then after the pandemic, I didn't bring it back. I was thinking about this earlier, those COVID performances. Remember where you're on Zoom and you have like a green screen behind you or videos? Like I participated in some of that, and it was great, but also weird. And, like you're playing to a black screen on your, on your computer screen. So it was weird, but yeah, I did get to perform that way. So.
Where was this pre-pandemic? Where in the Castro?
It was at Lookout, the Lookout Bar at 16th and Market. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have not been there for years. Oh, that's such a good place.
I love Nicole. I love Greg. I know the owner, Chris Hastings, who we play Frisbee. So it was a random big gay Frisbee. It's a small gay world here, San Francisco.
Thinking of performing and the Lookout, that was probably one of the last times I did karaoke. What is your karaoke go-to song?
I am a karaoke queen. I love karaoke. I will always throw down, to me, you don't have to be a great singer to do karaoke. You just have to have the passion, and you just have to have performance, like the feeling of it all. And so my favorite go-to song is by Queen, Somebody to Love. I actually just sang it yesterday at Jolene's. They had a karaoke night, and I saw it on Instagram. I was like, I am going. It's going to be great. And the fun thing about karaoke is that you can go, I went by myself, not knowing if I would know anybody, but you instantly connect through music and just through the words and, just the poetry that is in set to music that is karaoke. And I love Freddie Mercury, and I use that as my warm-up song. I tell everybody, and they're like, oh, okay, you're showboating. I am a show pony sometimes, and I love singing high, I love singing low, and I love getting the crowd involved. And that is that song, Somebody to Love, for sure.
Oh, it's such a great song. I think Queen is probably one of the best rock bands and definitely one of the best bands out there. How did you get introduced to Queen? I'm surprised because a lot of people of a certain age don't know anything about Freddie Mercury today.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering how you discovered Queen and Freddie Mercury.
I'm pretty sure the first time I heard any Queen song, it was Bohemian Rhapsody and it was Wayne's World. And I was like probably a kid in my teens or something. I was like, what is this music? I was that kid who listened to my clock radio every night. And so I just would listen to whatever's on the radio. And that's how I kind of absorbed all music. I would say, I know all these 70s, 80s, 90s, the hit rock music. But I think Queen, and I really connected to Queen. Actually, it was probably Glee. When Glee did all these covers. Glee is that show, a long time ago. I feel left now, but a Fox show, and they would have Queen. I think Somebody to Love is one of the songs they covered. And that's when I was like, I need to sing that song. I need to sing that song in my karaoke. And I had a whole karaoke party, just a Glee based party, right? It was at the Encore Karaoke Lounge, if you know where that is. And I don't know if it's still around, but it's on California Street.
And Polk.
Yeah. It was a great venue for my party, and had little cupcakes and everything. And I sang all the Glee covers that I could ever, to my heart's desire. Yeah.
What do you think about Asia SF closing?
It's heartbreaking. I actually know Larry, the owner. I was Miss Gap as my drag persona, Juicy Lui. I won the pageant. And a part of that was being, people reaching out in the community, and HSF, the owner, Larry, reached out and said, hey, you have to come to HSF and kind of, enjoy the experience. And it was an amazing experience. And I went back several times, of course, had birthday dinners there. It was 26 years serving this community and being kind of like a center for trans folks performing, just being beautiful, beautiful performers. And it's just so sad. I wish that someone can swoop in and save it or reform it, or, if anybody's interested in throwing something down, let me know. Juicy Lui Realness, LIU Realness on Instagram, and we'll talk.
I hope somebody can save it as well. I wasn't surprised because things are so hard. We were talking about that when we met, just post-pandemic closures. It's pretty heartbreaking. I agree with you. I hope somebody can swoop in. What do you think about the Vietnamese community in San Francisco? They've had some hard times with the restaurants and small businesses
Yeah, Turtle Tower leaving, closing down, talking about, iconic places. I was just in Tenderloin where Little Saigon is and getting my pho at Pho 2000. And there's so many good restaurants there just on that little stretch of like Larkin. I grew up as I said, in Texas, not really having connection to community. And I think it's so important that like Little Saigon survives and the Vietnamese community survives. I think the thing about Vietnamese Americans is that we are a very resilient people. We've been through so many wars and so many occupations and this and that war, this, that, and other. If you listen to the music, it's just a lot about heartbreak and crying and rain. There's a lot of rain songs. I'm not kidding. It's everything but rain because it's monsoon season. It's like very tropical weather. And sorry, I'm a comedy queen. I always joke. But yeah. I think our community is very much a community that will survive. And so I believe that the Vietnamese American community in San Francisco will survive. It'll take some time and it'll take some investment. And I think people have to keep dreaming, like that Glee song, Don't Stop Believing, like Journey. We have to keep believing that there is a brighter future for us here in San Francisco as Vietnamese Americans. And I know that me personally, I am dedicated and I'm invested in San Francisco for sure.
And what people I don't think understand, or maybe not understand is the right word, but food is a huge part of the culture. And it's like, it's not just a restaurant closing, it's something more, impactful when a Vietnamese restaurant closes. What's your favorite Vietnamese restaurant right now? Or top three.
I love Kevin's Noodle House in kind of off of it's right on Irving and 19th or Irving between 19th and 20th Avenue. That's my go-to pho place when I'm not going, other pho places. There's so many pho places, but I like Kevin's Noodle House. And also Gao is a new one, Gao's Kitchen, kind of in the same neighborhood on 20th and Irving has it's from the part of the Ben Tre restaurants down in South San Francisco. That family, I met the guy. He's very Instagrammable kind of guy. I haven't had the Fuzzilla or that's the big crazy fuzz, but like it has some really solid food there. And then there's a new place that's more like maybe more high end. It's called Bodega.
When did you go?
Maybe a couple months ago with some lawyer friends that we went and yeah.
I've been meaning to go and you thought that was pretty good.
No, it's very excellent. Yeah, it is definitely more higher end, I guess, but it's really good. Something about Vietnamese food, for me at least, is very comforting. It reminds me of, whether you have a good meal, you're just happy in a good spot, especially when you're sharing with friends. And, so a lot of Vietnamese food it takes so many hours to prepare because there's so much chopping and everything like that. So I know that there's a lot of love that goes into the food and I'm happy that everybody is enjoying it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Descript. When I started this podcast, I had no idea about the editing process, and it took me forever to edit one episode. And then I discovered Descript. Descript is an all-in-one audio and video editor that makes editing as easy as a Word doc. Upload media or record directly in Descript to instantly transcribe your file into text. Then tweak the text to directly edit your media clips. Edit out filler words and silent gaps with a single click. Record your screen and webcam for presentations and video messages, and edit out mistakes before publishing. Use pro editing features such as non-destructive multi-track editing, live collaboration, auto captioning, exports, and much more. I'll have a link in the show notes and you can try it out now.
That's so good to hear. How long have you been performing? I mean, we just talked a little bit about it, but how many years?
I really started, I said earlier, I won Miss GAPA as the Gay Asian Pacific Alliance, previously now the GLBTQ plus Asian Pacific Alliance. GAPA has this pageant every year, and I won it in 2016, and that's when I kind of really got really active. But I've been performing here and there for fundraisers and this and that for a while, since 2011, I guess. But I would say since 2016 when I became Miss GAPA 2016, and that kind of kickstarted my community organizing activism and also performing. So yeah, it's a weird entry point, honestly. I always say I'm getting into politics now, and it all started drag pageant, and you never know how you're going to get engaged because it was literally the day after the pageant when I was at like a little fundraiser and a house party, eating lumpia, and like these little aunties, the lesbian aunties, Asian aunties are just like, so juicy. Why aren't gay Asian men more involved in the movement? And I'm like, I was here for the lumpia. I didn't know I was, but I suddenly represent the whole community. And so I'm looked to as a role model and a spokesperson. And it was interesting for me. And I responded, like, I don't know. I'm going to have to find out. And that's been sort of my organizing question. And I was chair of GAPA for like 5 years. I started becoming more involved, kept thinking about that. I helped start Queer and Trans Asian Pacific Islander Week, Visibility Week. I know this wasn't the question, but like my drag story is very much tied to my activism story.
Yeah, no, perfect. It is. What is your pet peeve when you are performing?
I think it's the job of the performer to sort of create a space, create the fantasy that you are transported to some other world, whatever story you're telling. And for me, one of my pet peeves is when someone completely walks right in front of a drag show, like just completely nonchalantly with no qualms, and it just disrupts the fantasy. That's a big pet peeve for me. And then also I just told them just be careful, because not all drag performers are nice like me, Juicy, will let people get away, or
Hell no.
I might, other people might just make a ruckus, so be careful. And that part, but yeah, that happens. And just sort of a drag show etiquette. Don't do that. Support the performers, maybe walk around and find another way to get your seat or whatever, or wait for this music to end. Wait for the show part to end. Yeah.
I agree. So let's talk a little bit about the DCCC.
Yeah, the DCCC, the Democratic County Central Committee. So it's the local governing body of the San Francisco Democratic Party. Basically, there are 24 seats that are elected every 4 years. There's 14 on the east side, which is Assembly District 17, and 10 on the west side, which is Assembly District 19. I'm on the east side. I live up in Twin Peaks. And I am running with the Labor and Working Families slate, which is the progressive slate that's on the ballot. Ballots have dropped. And so this is for registered Democrats can vote for this election. It's sort of your voice. We represent Democrats to the statewide party and to the national party.
And what made you want to run? I mean, you talked a little bit about, you're very active and you're a great organizer. What was the final kind of push that you decided?
Yeah. So, I was kind of thinking, how to serve the community. And, as I learn more about this kind of honestly obscure little thing that nobody really knows about, but is a very powerful body that makes endorsements and resolutions and provides leadership and uplifts issues, right, that are to the Democratic Party, right? I had heard about this, and I talked to folks, and I saw that there really wasn't much queer Asian people leading on those issues. And I thought, I can be a good voice for that. I didn't set out to, it may, now looking back, I'm yeah, I did go to law to kind of figure out this governing thing, but I didn't really know about politics growing up that much. I wasn't that exposed to it. But now that I'm kind of in it here, in it to win it, SF, that's my hashtag. But yeah, it's kind of if not me, then who? And who will be talking about these issues? If not me, then who? Who will be fighting for working families, fighting for people like my father, who was, working his whole life in blue collar jobs, didn't speak English that well, worked in restaurants, worked in hospitals, serving food, wasn't unionized because it was Texas, right? But he on his feet all day, just, suffering, and trying to have a dignified life. And but nobody was fighting for him. And no one was out there saying he should deserve healthcare, single payer healthcare for all. No one was talking about housing that's affordable. We were just, it's a very immigrant life where, you're just trying to survive, and you got to do what you got to do. So I look at my father and his story, and I think, I want to help folks like my father here in San Francisco that are just trying to survive, just trying to put a roof over their heads, paycheck to paycheck, squeezing every last penny out of their paycheck to just make things work. Maybe working 2 jobs even. It's crazy. and also like our queer and trans Asian community, Asian Pacific Islander community, it should be, you would think that like we have one of the largest percentages in the Bay Area of like Asian and Pacific Islanders. We have the largest percentages of LGBTQ folks openly, but there have been very few people that are both, that identify in the LGBTQ community and the AAPI community in politics generally, right? Right now we have,
that's very strange.
like, it's just generally none, like very few. I think we have Janice Lee. I love Janice. She's a BART board director. We also have Vic Chung, their first openly non-binary college board trustee. And that's it. So I've been, as part of my work through GAPA is to try to, how do we uplift? How do we build a bench? How do we inspire others to run for office? And I'm inspired by Evan Lowe, who's I just saw yesterday. He's running for Congress down in the South Bay. Would be the first openly LGBTQ elected official to Congress from the Bay Area, which is nuts to me. But he would be if he gets elected. What it's needed is people who are willing to throw down, willing to put themselves out there. And as a drag performer, as a lawyer, as an activist, I was like, well, I should probably do this. I think that I should try and see how it goes. That's the honest answer.
So housing is a huge issue in the city.
Yeah.
One thing, tell me one thing that you would do.
There was this thing called social housing that Alex Lee, who's an assembly member out of the Fremont area, that he's been championing at the state level, but we have not been able to do here in San Francisco. And social housing, if you don't know, it's the model where the state kind of owns the property, right? Like, and maybe hire or he gets a nonprofit operator to sort of, just do the day-to-day stuff. But like the actual property is owned by the state. And so that it becomes permanently affordable, if that makes sense. And so Singapore does a great job of this. Vienna does a great job of this, where in Singapore, for example, you don't have to be like very low income. There's middle income earners living in this called social housing because it's a mixed tenancy, I guess. So that there's like people, there's higher earners and then there's very low income earners. And so I think that model, if it was implemented in San Francisco, which now we're going to policy land, very wonky. Sorry if that's happening, but it's called the Small Sites Acquisition Program. And our mayor has been very the mayor's office of housing and community development, MOCD, has not been very active about this, about buying. I don't know if you remember, but there was this whole Prop I funds that was like for housing and that created a bucket of money basically. And like the mayor has not been doing anything. And like Dean Preston has been a champion for social housing, but unfortunately Dean Preston and Mayor Breed do not get along. So the politics got kind of, schmutz. So the one thing that we could change about housing is to implement social housing and try it out. And let's get some buildings acquired that maybe old dilapidated office buildings. So just tear it down. We don't need it, and just build some housing and have the city own it. Right. And so you see all these properties now for sale downtown. It would actually cost more money to try to renovate it than to just tear it down sometimes, so tear it down and build something beautiful and have the city own it. But the problem, it's not perfect either, right? Whenever state is involved and the city is involved, it could be kind of a bureaucratic nightmare. You can see this whole stuff with the bathrooms in Noe Valley. There's like $1.7 million bathrooms, something like that.
Ridiculous.
It's insanity. And it's because of the red tape. It's because of bureaucracy. It's because of inefficiency. And I would say corruption in City Hall. There's a lot going on. And, here's the thing. I am not an expert in planning. I am not an expert in this kind of city governing stuff. I am just a person. I'm a drag performer. I'm an activist type, a community. I'm a lawyer. I like to ask questions though. I can ask questions and try to get an understanding of like what is actually happening. And that is what the role of the Democratic County Central Committee is to sort of pass resolutions, to ask questions, hold hearings, to have town halls, unite our Democrats, get people engaged into this type of work and keep asking the hard questions about why can't we have housing that's abundant and affordable? Why can't we have? Tell me why. Why can't we have healthcare that is, healthcare for all?
I am a big fan of the social housing aspect. I am with you 100%. We could have it. It could be happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the really frustrating thing of exactly what you're talking about is about the red tape. So how do you think that you would not get caught up in the red tape?
You know, that's a great question. I think the way out of the morass, the way out of the molasses of it all is to have a crystal clear value and always understand what are my values. And I identify as a progressive. And as a progressive, I think that housing is a right. I think that people, especially in one of the richest cities in the nation, we should have housing for everybody to be able to have housing. And so whenever things get thick and messy and complicated, and that is just the nature of governing, that is the nature of democracy, I will always go back to that. Well, what can we do to get more housing done? And that's affordable, that's permanently affordable. What can we do to cut through the red tape? And let's think creatively about this. And I would ask a lot of questions of a lot of stakeholders. And here's the thing. Affordable housing is actually very profitable for developers, right? The current system. So I think they're a little afraid of social housing because it's this new thing, we don't know where's this puzzle piece going to fit into my being, you know? And so that's why they're just afraid of it. And it's sort of like, okay, well, that shouldn't be the reason. The reason, you know, we should start taking bold action.
They're still going to be building. That's what they don't understand. There's still going to be construction. So because we put the word social housing, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get paid.
Yeah. I mean, even during the COVID crisis, the emergency, we had Project Home Key, right? And they used hotels to house the unhoused, and at least temporarily. And what did that do? That led to good results, good outcomes. You know, people got better and were able to access treatment, all these things. I think it's a complicated issue, and I'm not going to say, you know, it's easy and that I will solve it all. Like I am definitely a person who is, you know, that is one of my top issues for sure, along with public safety as another issue. You know, so I'll just share really quickly that the mod slate, these SF Democrats for Change, they're going real hard. They're calling me an extremist. And I'm like, all right, what are you? I mean, blindly even, you know, they're putting my name down and saying they're extreme, you know, he's extremist. And because I believe that community should keep in charge of our safety, right? Like safety, what is our safety? What does that look like? That looks like investing in programs that try to take away, like, you know, reduce the root causes of crime generally, right? And that means investing in our communities. That means, you know, a community policing model, right? And so to me, it's common sense to censor a community when you're talking about safety, and not to censor the police and not to censor, you know, their overtime and this ridiculousness of it all. So anyways, that's where I fall. To me, it seems it's very reasonable, but not extremist at all. But, you know, there are attack ads all the which way, which is kind of crazy, which I'm like, I know I've made it. You know, I'm principled here and that they're already fighting me. They're scared.
That's exactly right. They are scared. What do you say about that when somebody calls you an extremist?
You know, I think there's nothing extreme for wanting big, bold change, because I think the beauty of America is that it was always started by these people who just had some bold idea, you know, that had never been done before. That is the birth of America, right? So I am just a descendant of that long line of people who have big, bold ideas. That's called progress and progressives, right? Progress can change. It just starts with an idea, and to them, it might seem extreme because it's new. Anything that is new will seem extreme. I deal with inventions all the time, right? And it can shatter paradigms, all these things. You could say it's extreme. No, well, it's also bold change. And at the end of the day, you have to try to just figure out what is better for our society generally. What will work better? What has a track record? What has evidence behind it? What does the data say, as all these tech people say? And let's think through that, not just like call names and, you know, use these long, like from the 80s stuff on crime approach, you know, this long, like debunked things. Anyway, it's just weird, crazy stuff.
That's how it is. When is your next fundraiser?
Well, I'm having an event on Valentine's Day. It's a cabaret at Martuni's, which I love Martuni's. It'll be at 8 p.m. So come after your dinner, come hang out. The martinis there are very strong, so be careful. But also, like, it's, you know, we'll sing some songs. It's a very low key event for me. But yeah, always able to take more money via online bit.ly/juicy thoughts, THOTS. I was able to raise $3,000 at my drag show last Sunday at the Oasis, which I love the Oasis, in the middle of a rainstorm and wind and everything. But yeah, it was an amazing event.
I will put all of that in my notes, all of that in my show notes, all of your contact information. This has been so much fun. I'm so glad I met you.
Thanks, Traci.
Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Like I said before, I've been to quite a few of these political get-togethers, and the surprise and delight of meeting someone like Michael, I mean, such a breath of fresh air. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. And of course, we wish him well with his campaign. I can't wait to see what he's going to do with the DCCC, the DCCC. I mean, I don't want to jinx anything. He is being outspent 4-1. So he does have a bit of a road ahead of him, but I think it's going to be a great race. And if you haven't donated and you are able to, please check out the links in the show notes or volunteer for his campaign. It's good to get off your ass and go knock on some doors and to know your neighbors and fellow San Franciscans. Just kidding. But honestly, if you have time to volunteer for Michael's campaign or you can give him some money, that's awesome. Don't forget to vote. And remember, please tip your bartenders. Thanks.